The code that writes itself. The complete story of Claude Code. Some products are planned for years, roadmapped, budgeted, debated in boardrooms. This one was an accident. In September 2024, an engineer at Anthropic built a small tool to solve a small problem. What happened next changed the way software is made. This is the story of how an AI learned to write code, and why nothing has been the same since. Act 1. The Foundation. Late 2020. Researchers begin leaving OpenAI. Dario Amodei, Tom Brown, Chris Olah, Sam McCandlish, Jack Clark, and Jared Kaplan. Their reason? AI safety isn't a department, it's the mission. In early 2021, joined by Daniela Amodei and others, they formally incorporate Anthropic with $124 million and a radical idea, constitutional AI, where the model judges its own outputs against a set of principles, instead of relying solely on human feedback. It's an approach that will define everything that follows. March 2023. Claude 1 launches with just 9,000 tokens of context, barely enough to read a short essay, but Anthropic iterates fast. By June 2024, Claude 3.5 Sonnet scores 33.4% on StudyWE Bench, the industry's toughest coding benchmark. The first real hint that Anthropic's models can write production-quality code. Meanwhile, in November 2024, Anthropic quietly open sources something called the Model Context Protocol, MCP, a universal standard for connecting AI to external tools. Nobody realizes yet how important this decision will be. Boris Cherny is a TypeScript expert who literally wrote the book on TypeScript programming. He joins Anthropic in September 2024 and starts tinkering. His prototype is laughably simple, an Apple script that calls the Claude API from the macOS terminal. But when he adds file system access, the behavior changes. The AI doesn't just answer questions anymore. It starts doing things, reading code bases, editing files, running commands. Cherny shows it to a few colleagues. Their reaction is immediate. Within 5 days, half of Anthropic's engineering team is using it. Not because anyone mandated adoption, because it's genuinely faster. The team grows quickly. Sid Biddesaria becomes engineer number 2, building the sub-agent architecture that will later define the product. Kat Wu joins as product manager. They choose a bold tech stack, TypeScript, React rendered in the terminal using Ink and Yoga, powered by the Bun JavaScript runtime. They call it Claude Code. Act 2. The launch. February 24th, 2025. Anthropic announces Claude Code as a limited research preview, alongside Claude 3.7 Sonnet, the first hybrid reasoning model with toggleable extended thinking. Claude Code is a command-line interface that can chat, edit files, run bash commands, search codebases, and commit to GitHub. It's primitive by later standards. No IDE integration, no web access, no plugins. But it works. And it works well enough that developers start paying attention. The next 3 months are relentless. March brings Vim mode, custom commands, and a feature that will define the product, Claude.md, project-level instruction files that tell the AI how your specific codebase works. April adds image support and concurrent operations. Each release moves faster than the last. Inside Anthropic, they're eating their own cooking, using Claude Code to build Claude Code. The recursion starts early. May 22, 2025. Claude Code exits research preview alongside Claude 4, Opus 4, and Sonnet 4. The barriers fall. Any pro subscriber can use it with just their Claude.ai login. No API key required. Opus 4 scores 49% on SWE Bench, nearly 50% better than where Claude 3.5 Sonnet started just 10 months earlier. In a single day, Claude Code transforms from an experiment into a commercial product available to millions. June 2025 brings the building blocks of an ecosystem. The Claude Code SDK launches in Python and TypeScript, letting developers embed the agent into their own tools. The hooks system lets you inject custom scripts at every lifecycle event, before a tool runs, after it completes, when the session starts. MCP integration connects Claude Code to databases, APIs, and external tools. Headless mode enables CI/CD automation. Claude Code isn't just a tool anymore, it's a platform. Act 3. The explosion. By July 2025, the metrics are staggering. 115,000 developers, processing 195 million lines of code every single week. Native Windows support arrives, removing the last major platform barrier. Custom sub-agents enable developers to delegate specialized tasks to purpose-built AI agents, and the revenue curve is going vertical. $500 million in annualized revenue by August, just 3 months after general availability. September 29, 2025. Claude Code 2.0 launches alongside Claude Code 4.5, what Anthropic calls the best coding model in the world. The release is massive, a native VS Code extension that shows inline diffs in real time, a checkpoint system that snapshots your project before every change, and GitHub Actions integration that brings AI directly into the CI/CD pipeline. Sonnet 4.5 can work autonomously for over 30 hours on complex tasks. The age of the autonomous coding agent has arrived. But the most radical shift isn't what Claude Code can do, it's when it does it. Background agents transform the interaction model entirely. Instead of waiting for a response, developers spawn tasks and walk away. Need a test suite written? Fire and forget. Want a codebase migrated? Launch it overnight. The agent works in the background, reading, writing, committing, while you sleep. It's the difference between a conversation and a delegation. By December 2025, power users are running 10 or 15 background agents simultaneously, each handling a different piece of a project, reporting back when they're done. The terminal isn't a chat box anymore, it's a dispatch center. October 2025. Claude Code goes everywhere. A web version launches in the browser. Coding agents accessible from any device. An iOS app puts them in your pocket. A Chrome extension lets it control the browser itself, navigating pages, clicking buttons, reading console logs. And the native installer means you no longer need Node.js to use it. Just download and run. User growth hits 10 times since May. A post from Boris Cherny on X garners 4.4 million views, and adoption inflects sharply upward. October 2025. Claude Code learns a new trick. Skills. From the beginning, users could type /commands. Help, clear, compact to manage their sessions. But now, developers can create their own. A simple markdown file in a project folder becomes a reusable workflow that Claude follows step by step. Commit reviews your changes and writes the commit message. Review PR launches 5 parallel agents that each analyze a pull request from a different angle. Deploy triggers a full deployment pipeline. Skills transform Claude Code from a tool you talk to into a tool you program, without writing a single line of code. By January 2026, Anthropic merges /commands and skills into a single unified system. Every command is a skill. Every skill is a command. And then the community does something nobody expected. In June 2025, a developer named Jeffrey Huntley creates what he calls the Ralph Wiggum Loop, named improbably after a cartoon character from The Simpsons. The concept is absurdly simple: a bash while loop that feeds the same prompt to Claude Code over and over. While true, run Claude Code, fix whatever broke, repeat. It sounds like a joke. It isn't. Within months, the loop goes viral. A developer uses it to build an entire programming language called Cursed, a full compiler, standard library, and documentation, in 3 months of autonomous iteration. Another completes $50,000 worth of contract work for $297 in compute costs. By December 2025, the technique is so mainstream that developers build dedicated tooling around it. The loop that started as a meme has become a legitimate development methodology. The same month, plugins arrive. Where skills teach Claude how to work, plugins extend what Claude can do. A single plugin can bundle/commands, custom subagents, MCP servers, hooks that fire at every lifecycle event, and even language server integrations, all in one installable package. Developers share plugins through marketplaces, Git repositories that act as registries. Within weeks, the ecosystem explodes: 9,000 plugins, 63,000 agent skills, tools for DevOps, security scanning, database management, framework-specific workflows. Claude Code is no longer just Anthropic's product. It belongs to the community that builds on it. December 18th, 2025. Anthropic makes a move that surprises the industry. They publish Agent Skills as an open standard at agentskills.io. A specification so simple you can read it in minutes. The bet: if skills work everywhere, everyone builds more of them, and the entire ecosystem benefits. It works. Microsoft adopts the format. OpenAI adds skills to Codex CLI and ChatGPT. Cursor, GitHub, Figma, Stripe, Notion, and Zapier build partner skills. Anthropic didn't just build a platform. They wrote the rules of the game and invited their competitors to play. Remember MCP, the Model Context Protocol that Anthropic quietly open-sourced in November 2024? By mid-2025, it detonates. Thousands of MCP servers spring up, connecting Claude Code to databases, cloud platforms, design tools, monitoring systems, payment processors, and virtually every API imaginable. Developers build MCP servers for Slack, GitHub, Jira, Figma, Notion, Stripe, AWS, and dozens more. The protocol becomes the universal adapter between AI agents and the digital world. Where plugins extend what Claude Code is, MCP extends what it can reach. The ecosystem doubles every 60 days. By February 2026, the MCP registry lists over 12,000 active servers. Claude Code can now talk to virtually any system on the planet. The cultural shift has a name. On February 2, 2025, Andrej Karpathy, former director of AI at Tesla, coins the term vibe coding. Instead of writing code line by line, you describe what you want and let the AI build it. You don't read the code. You run it, see what happens, and iterate. It sounds absurd until you try it. Within months, vibe coding goes from a joke to a job description. The $7.37 billion AI coding tools market is being redefined in real time. December 2, 2025. 2 announcements land on the same day. First, Claude Code has crossed $1 billion in annualized revenue just 6 months after general availability. That's faster than ChatGPT reached the same milestone. Second, Anthropic makes its first ever acquisition, Bun, the JavaScript runtime that powers Claude Code's internals. They're not just building on open source anymore. They're buying the infrastructure. The side project has become the company's most important product. Act 4. The Arms Race. To understand Claude Code's rise, you have to understand what it displaced. GitHub Copilot launched in June 2021 as the first mainstream AI coding assistant, backed by OpenAI's Codex model. By 2025, it has 20 million users and 42% market share. Microsoft embeds it into everything: VS Code, Visual Studio, the entire Azure ecosystem. For most developers, Copilot is AI coding. But Copilot is fundamentally an autocomplete tool. It suggests the next line of code based on context. Claude Code doesn't suggest, it builds. But Copilot isn't the only competition. Cursor explodes onto the scene, hitting $1 billion in annual recurring revenue in just 17 months, the fastest any developer tool has ever grown. Its valuation reaches $29.3 billion. Devon from Cognition Labs brands itself as the first AI software engineer and raises at a $10.2 billion valuation. Google launches Project Anti-Gravity. Amazon ships Cairo. The AI coding market becomes the most fiercely contested space in all of technology. The arms race needs a scoreboard, and the industry can't agree on one. SWE Bench was the first serious benchmark for AI coding, real GitHub issues that models must diagnose and fix. Claude started at 33%. By early 2026, it's past 72%. But critics argue SWE Bench only tests bug fixes. TAU Bench emerges to measure real-world tool use. Can the AI actually interact with APIs and databases? Terminal Bench tests raw command line fluency. The ADA leaderboard tracks multi-file editing accuracy. Every company cherry-picks the benchmark where their model looks best. The truth is, no single number captures what these tools can do. What matters isn't the score, it's the trajectory. And every trend line is pointing in the same direction, up. And then there's Windsurf, perhaps the most dramatic story in the industry. The company, originally called Codium, rebrands as Windsurf and rises fast. Then OpenAI offers to acquire them. The deal collapses. Google swoops in, hiring Windsurf's entire leadership team for $2.4 billion. Cognition acquires the remaining assets. In a single week, a company gets pulled apart by three of the biggest names in AI. It's a sign of just how high the stakes have become. So, what makes Claude Code different from all of them? Three things. First, it's terminal first, not an IDE plugin, but an agentic system that treats the command line as its native environment. It can do anything a developer can do from a shell. Second, it's built on constitutional AI principles. Safety constraints are architectural, not afterthoughts. And third, the economics. One developer with Claude Code can accomplish what used to take a team a month. At $6 to $7 per day, that's a 10 to 30 times return on investment. Not a productivity improvement, a paradigm shift. Act 5. The New World. February 5th, 2026. Claude Opus 4.6 launches with a 1 million token context window, 5 times the previous limit. But the headline feature is agent teams. One Claude Code session can now spawn independent teammates that communicate directly, share task lists, and self-coordinate. It's the difference between having a single assistant and having an entire engineering department. Adaptive thinking lets the model decide how deeply to reason about each step. Auto memory gives it persistent recall across sessions. It remembers your codebase, your preferences, your mistakes. Plan mode lets it explore before it builds. Opus 4.6 outperforms GPT 5.2 on economically valuable knowledge work. The gap is widening. The enterprise doesn't adopt new tools, it absorbs them. Slowly at first, then all at once. By late 2025, Fortune 500 companies begin deploying Claude Code across their engineering organizations. Fintech firms use it to modernize legacy COBOL systems. Healthcare companies automate regulatory compliance documentation. Defense contractors run it in air-gapped environments. The pattern is always the same. A senior engineer tries it on a weekend project. Productivity doubles. The team notices. Management approves a pilot. The pilot succeeds. And within 3 months, it's company-wide. Anthropic's enterprise revenue more than doubles between January and February 2026. The tool that started as one engineer's side project is now embedded in the infrastructure of global corporations. The economics tell the real story. When Claude Code launched, the Pro plan cost $20 a month and hit usage limits within hours of serious coding. By May 2025, the Max plan arrives at $100 and $200 per month, with 5 and 20 times the usage respectively. The math is simple. A senior developer costs a company $500 to $800 per day in salary, benefits, and overhead. Claude Code Max costs roughly $6 to $7 per day. Even if it only replaces 10% of that developer's manual work, the return is extraordinary. Enterprise teams report 10 to 30 times return on investment. Some companies are giving every engineer a max subscription, the way they used to give everyone a laptop as standard equipment. $2.5 billion in annualized revenue. 4% of all public commits on GitHub, 135,000 commits every single day, are authored by Claude Code. Enterprise subscriptions have quadrupled since the start of 2026. Anthropic projects that by the end of the year, 20% of all daily GitHub commits will be written by Claude Code. 1 in 5 lines of new code on the planet, authored by an AI that was a side project just 18 months ago. The impact goes beyond metrics. Apple integrates Claude into Xcode 26.3, the development environment used by every iOS developer on Earth. Claude Cowork launches as a desktop GUI, putting coding agents in the hands of non-technical users for the first time. Spotify reports that their best engineers haven't written code by hand since December 2025. And inside Anthropic itself, the number is even more striking. Approximately 90% of the company's code is now written by AI. Claude Code is building Claude Code, which is building Claude Code. The recursion is no longer theoretical. And then comes the question nobody wants to answer. If AI writes 90% of the code at Anthropic, what happens to the junior developer who was supposed to write that code to learn the craft? The debate splits the industry. Optimists argue that AI handles the mundane, boilerplate, testing, documentation, freeing humans for architecture and design. Skeptics counter that those mundane tasks were the training ground. Without them, how does anyone become a senior engineer? The data is ambiguous. Developer job postings are down 18% year over year. But total software output has tripled. The jobs aren't disappearing, they're transforming. The engineer of 2026 doesn't write code from scratch. They orchestrate AI agents, review generated code, and make architectural decisions. Whether that's liberation or loss depends entirely on who you ask. Boris Cherny's music status tool became a billion-dollar business in 6 months. Along the way, it may have changed what it means to be a software engineer. The question is no longer whether AI will write our code. That's already happening at scale across millions of repositories in languages the AI was never explicitly trained to speak. The question is what we do with the time we get back, and whether we're ready for a world where the code that runs our lives writes itself. The Code That Writes Itself, a documentary by the AI epileptic. Subscribe for more documentaries on the forces shaping technology.